Hi everyone, I'm back, and today I'm gonna do my first book review here on YouTube. I'm sorry I wasn't able to do a February review, but I was kind of occupied by tests and other nasty stuff. So, let's go straight to the point. In March, the first book I read is called The Lovely Bones by Alice Sebold. It's about this girl called Susie Salmon who was murdered, and she narrates this book from heaven. I didn't find this book so interesting. Well, the interesting climax was kind of like this. Interesting, boring, interesting, boring, interesting, boring. So I kind of lost interest at the second or third boring point. So I give this book a 5 out of 10. And the next book I read is a book that I read a second time. It's called 19 Minutes by Jodi Picoult. Jodi Picoult is one of my favorite writers, and 19 Minutes is one of my favorite books that she wrote. It's about this girl called Josie. Her mother is a judge, and she's in high school. But one day, this boy that she grew up with, called Peter, goes into her school and shoots a lot of people, including her boyfriend. I found this book a real roller coaster ride. There was a twist at the end that totally changed my viewpoint. Like all throughout the book, well, like in almost all of the book, I was convinced that Josie's boyfriend was killed by Peter. But as it turns out, that's not the case. I give this book a 9 out of 10. It's a real classic. I love it. And the next few books are from the Ender's Game series. It's a science fiction series, and the first book is called Ender's Game. In this book, Ender is still a child, but he is taken from his parents to a battle school where he learns military tactics and stuff. He's really good and intelligent, so, well, in the end, he goes and saves the world and stuff. But this book is my favorite in the series, and I would strongly recommend you to read it. And I give this book a 9 out of 10. It's really good. The next book in the series is called Speaker for the Dead. This book is, well, the timeline is actually 3,000 years later than the first book. But Ender is still a young man, about 20 years old or something, because of star travel. He doesn't age as fast. And this book takes place on a planet called Lusitania, where there are little aliens called piggies. And the main difference between this book and the first book, Ender's Game, is that in the first book, Ender is considered a hero for wiping out the alien species that seemed pretty dangerous. But in this book, Ender is actually considered as evil and cruel for wiping out the alien species, committing genocide. But this book is not as interesting as the first book, so I give it a 7 out of 10. The next book I read in the series, but please note it's not the last book in the series, is called Genocide. It's slightly longer than the first two, so it took me quite a lot of time to finish it. And in this book, Lusitania decides to rebel against Congress. And Congress sends a fleet to destroy Lusitania once and for all, but mysteriously, the fleet disappears. And it's up to this girl called Gloriously Bright to figure out what happened to the fleet. The cool thing about this book is that Gloriously Bright is of Chinese descent. And there is a lot of English translations of Chinese poetry in the book. So I had quite a lot of fun trying to figure out the Chinese version of all those poetry. Still liked it a lot though, and I also give it a 7 out of 10. The last book I read is called The Running Dream, and I really liked this book. as an athlete myself, it really inspired me. It's about a sprinter that she was doing so well in her track career, but after a track meet, she was in a car accident that damaged both of her legs and they had to be amputated. The book is about how she stood up after the amputation, both physically and mentally, and it's very inspiring. I really like it, so I give it a 9 out of 10. And that's all I read for March, and let's give you a quick insight of what I'm going to read in April. In April, I'm going to read quite a lot of John Green books as requested. I read Looking for Alaska by John Green a couple of weeks ago, and I really liked it. So John Green is one of my favorite writers now. Okay, so the first book I'm going to read is called The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. I'm already through about 1/4 of the book, and I think it's quite interesting. So I expect it to be interesting throughout the whole book. It's a New York Times bestseller, so no wonder why it's so good. The next book, also by John Green, is called Will Grayson, Will Grayson. I haven't actually opened it yet, but this neon cover just made me want to buy it in the bookstore. Well, I read the back of it, and it's about 2 guys with the same name, just so cool, that met each other in their story. Looks like a nice book. And the last book by John Green that I'm going to read this month is called Paper Towns. I'm not sure what it's about, so I can't tell you much about it, but seems like a pretty cool book. The next book I'm going to read, the end of Quartet. I'm going to finish the last book of the Quartet. It's called Children of the Mind. And I enjoyed the first 3 books I kind of enjoyed the first 3 books, so I hope it's going to be a nice book. And the last book I'm going to read is a book I borrowed from the library. It's called To Kill a Mockingbird, a classic. And I flipped through the first few pages and I thought it was quite interesting. So, and that's all for today, and happy Easter. I ordered some books from Caves yesterday, so I'm probably gonna do a book haul video like quite soon. Well, when I get my books, obviously. So see you soon, guy. Bye.